Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's have a look at how loving and tolerant the 2SL LGBTQIA++ community is to a trans woman who happens to be conservative. Surely they'll be welcoming and inclusive. Let's see how Blair White was treated at Pride in Austin, Texas.
It's true.
Are you trans and supporting Trump?
I didn't read that.
Jesus. I thought it was about pride, good emotions. The security won't stop following me. Why are you still following me? Do you identify as a bully? So why didn't you do anything when the person was screaming at you and having to be hauled off by his friend? Only when I ask questions respectfully to everyone? Okay. Hey boo, what's up? We're being treated kind of badly here.
Oh, I'm sorry. And do not engage with the police, don't engage with them.
Look how crazy this person is. Yeah. This is a fan of mine. Get away from me. You're filming me saying these are conservatives, so it kind of sounds like you have a problem. Because at the end of the day, I'm trans, I can be here.
Got to tell you, I ain't feeling the tolerance. Let's go from Austin, which has been ruined by Californians, to California, to West Hollywood. And what has been the highlight of the Pride Parade for you?
I really can't. You know, I met that dancing bear out here in front of the WeHo. Oh my gosh.
What has been your favorite part of this event so far?
I loved going out there and seeing all the kids.
Really? Your favourite part is seeing all the kids watching the parade? A parade full of prancing, scantily clad adults is not exactly the sort of thing kids should be exposed to unless you're a lefty losing it. Now, this drag queen is doing wonderful work, not reading to or prancing around half naked in front of kids, but educating fully grown adults about basic facts.
And so I did a study abroad in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine.
Would you say you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel?
Pro-Palestine.
As a gay man, I would be punished and or put in prison or killed if I were openly gay in Palestine. How do you react to that?
I didn't know that. So
it is illegal to be gay in Palestine. You are punished by prison or death.
Israel?
No, Israel has gay pride. Israel is completely open to lesbian and gay people. So Palestine puts them in prison or kills them. You weren't aware of that?
I was not aware of that, no.
You weren't aware of that? You said you studied it and you're wearing rainbow colours. You don't know the most basic facts about where gays and lesbians face genuine persecution. Let's see how she copes with this schooling.
So that does pose an interesting aspect.
Have you seen the Queers for Palestine movement? It's a very common movement, but I don't see any Muslims for Queer movements.
Yes. That's where it gets gray, right? Like, that's where I feel like...
Well, for me, it's not gray.
It gets grey, really? These are the people who claim there is a trans genocide happening in the US, who think protecting your children from radical gender theory indoctrination in school is bigoted and harmful, but gays and lesbians being beaten, jailed, killed, that's just a grey area. Now, drag queen tries to teach this ignorant lefty about the plight of the gay community in Muslim-majority countries.
There is no Islamic country on earth that embraces me as a gay man.
So, okay, so maybe I'm confused because Israel, which is still an Islam country, right?
No, Jewish.
Okay.
So Israel's Jewish, Palestinians are Islamic.
Okay.
Yeah, she studied it. Get your money back, lady. Now let's continue Lefties Losing It with an important message from the leader of the free world. Today, Joe Biden vowed a crackdown. He was going to tackle the border crisis he has created. The man whose policies have seen illegal immigration records broken every single year of his presidency is blaming the Republicans and vowing tough action.
I've come here today to do what the Republicans in Congress refuse to do. Take the necessary steps to secure our border. We came to a clear bipartisan deal. It was the strongest border security agreement in decades. But then, Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to.
That's the most lucid we've seen him for some time. He must be on the good stuff. But Biden's shameless attempts today to blame Trump and the Republicans for this crisis requires Americans to memory hole everything he has said and done to cause this crisis. Remember, he told illegal immigrants to search the border when he was campaigning in the lead up to the 2020 election.
I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
And when he was asked, wouldn't his policies vowing to overturn Trump's tough border protection plan lead to an illegal immigration crisis, his response was this.
First of all, every executive order this president has issued relating to the border and relating to dealing with the Hispanic community is going to be pulled back. We're not going to be fooling with that.
Won't that restart a brand new border crisis? I mean, what would you do with all those people in camps now waiting in Mexico?
It will if we don't do it well.
Those asylum seekers that are on the other side of the border now in camps going to be allowed to come and do their claims inside the United States, something that has not been afforded?
It's the first time ever you've had to seek asylum in a third country. It's outrageous. It's outrageous.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. What? It's outrageous to have borders. Reminder, his administration has let in millions illegally every single year of his presidency, more than 2 million a year. And why? Well, because he kept his election promise to overturn Trump's policies. Indeed, on day one of Biden's presidency, he terminated the national emergency with respect to the southern border and redirected funds destined for completing the wall. On day one, he did this. He terminated policies that were slashing the numbers crossing illegally. And he also said this: building a massive wall that spans the entire southern border is not a serious policy solution. It is a waste of money that diverts attention from genuine threats to our homeland security. Genuine threats to homeland security? What is that, Joe? Mums at school board meetings who don't want their kids indoctrinated with radical gender theory. As for this new plan that he's announced today, as the New York Post points out, such a crackdown is a mirage. Even if the executive order was fully enforced, 1.8 million asylum seekers will still be allowed to enter the US every year. 1.8 million. Joining me now is Senior Editor-at-Large of Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, what do you make of President Biden's announcement? Will this plan solve the border crisis?
You know, Rita, a few things jump right off the top based on those clips that we just saw. The first thing that I want to note is that clip of Joe Biden in his basement from 2020, back when he was running the basement campaign during COVID. You know, he's clearly old in that video, but he's actually remarkably more lucid than he is now. So I just want to make that very first point right off the top. He has declined a lot just over the past 3 to 3.5 years or so, because that video in 20 is very, very different than what we're getting nowadays. But to the actual immigration order in question here. So the relevant legal section, it's the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212F, which is codified at 8 U.S. Code 1182, subsection F. The reason I know all this is because it's a frequently invoked section of American immigration law. During the Trump administration, a lot of border hawks, such as myself, were talking about invoking 212F. There are a few things to note here. One, if Joe Biden thinks that invoking this is somehow a panacea to our border crisis, why in the world is he just doing it now? I mean, why are we waiting until the summer of a presidential election year? Why wasn't he doing it 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I mean, essentially, just after this president took office in January of 2021, that's when the border crisis surged. And as you just showed there, it has a lot to do with the fact that on day one, he started repealing Trump executive orders. So if he actually cared to shut down the border, he could have done this 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The second point to make here is that the fact that Joe Biden is now belatedly conceding that he has this executive authority, this belies the utter lie that was the so-called bipartisan border bill that the U.S. Senate was talking about just a few months ago, back when Chuck Schumer and then James Lankford, the useful idiot from Oklahoma, they had this so-called bipartisan border bill, which thankfully didn't see the light of day. It was a terrible bill. But at the time, Biden was saying, give me a law, Congress. I need a law. Now he's saying he could just do it unilaterally. So he's all over the place here. The final point to make here, Rita, I think, This obviously has everything to do with domestic politics in an election year. I think what Joe Biden is trying to do here, because he is a deeply cynical man, all he cares about is his domestic polling. We see it on every single issue, very much including the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza as well. I think what he is doing here is he is seeing that moderates and independents want a secure border, but what he's anticipating, I think, is that far left legal groups are going to immediately file a lawsuit, as the ACLU has already done. And I think that he's anticipating that the courts will gum up the works, which will simultaneously allow him to say, oh, look, I'm a border hawk, I'm trying to secure the border, while on the other hand, he will actually still have the open border. So it's a deeply, deeply cynical maneuver, I think.
Deeply cynical, but he can't change history. He can't change the fact that he terminated those Trump policies straight away as soon as he entered the Oval Office. And just this week, we've had another symptom of this border crisis. Authorities alleging that illegal immigrant was responsible for shooting 2 New York police officers, Josh. So this relationship with crimes being committed by illegal immigrants, all the other consequences of this enormous influx of people who've entered illegally, it is being felt in cities across America.
Rita, it's everywhere. It is truly everywhere. So I'll give you just one example. In late March, I was speaking in Columbus, Ohio, which is the capital of the state of Ohio. I was speaking to a group of lawyers about the war in Gaza, actually. And anyway, afterwards, I met with a prominent statewide elected official from the state of Ohio. I will not name names because it was an off-the-record conversation. But I was talking with this official about the immigration issue, and I basically said, sir, so-and-so, your state is not a border state, but what are you doing about immigration, XYZ? And he essentially cut me off, and he said, Josh, what are you talking about? Every state nowadays is a border state. Because it is. Because we are feeling the pains of this all throughout the country. When you look at the number of migrants that Joe Biden has been flying in, has been busing in from the border, they have reached all of the extremities of the United States at this point. It is very much not limited to Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. It's not limited to the high Sonoran Desert in Arizona. It is truly everywhere. I mean, here in Florida, where I live, Florida is not technically a border state because we're surrounded mostly by water. But, there was a horrific instance of illegal alien crime in Palm Beach County just a month ago or so. And the Palm Beach County sheriff was actually very outspoken about this. He said this individual who committed these horrific rapes and traffickings and child predations, which I believe the alien was involved in all of that, the Palm Beach County sheriff said he should not have been here. He should not have been here, period, full stop, end of story. There are so many stories like this anecdotally. The murder trial, by the way, of the killer of Laken Riley in Athens, Georgia, has just started. So hopefully we'll see a modicum of justice there. But this is a national travesty. And Joe Biden, to put it mildly, Rita, is a little late to the game.
But on crime, we are seeing these soft on crime prosecutors, DAs and mayors. The Boston mayor, the Democrat Michelle Wu, she's pushing an entire soft on crime agenda, insisting that things like shoplifting, breaking and entering, underage drinking, drug possession, larceny, threats, they should not be prosecuted. And she also wants the Boston police gang database to be shuttered. How are politicians like this getting elected, Josh? Are Democrats so dominant in parts of America that they can pretty much propose anything and still be elected?
Yeah, if you're a Soros-funded far-left prosecutor, you don't think that grand larceny or robbery or something else should be prosecuted. But apparently you think that alleged fraudulent bookkeeping, which a Trump organization may or may not have done with the legal expenses to Michael Cohen in furtherance of some undefined crime. I mean, just look at Alvin Bragg in New York City. He has been building up this case against Trump for many years now. Meanwhile, grand larceny, burglary, robbery, all these crimes have absolutely soared. In New York City, if you are a robber or a burglar, you probably know that you are not going to be prosecuted. Again, if you're Donald Trump, then I guess you know that you're going to be prosecuted. So part of the problem, Rita, it really is George Soros. I mean, George Soros is a singular menacing force when it comes to American politics and when it comes to the problem of the so-called progressive prosecutor in general. He funds them all across the country, in Los Angeles and San Francisco. Now, there is a silver lining here, which is that some cities have shown signs of not having it anymore. So in San Francisco 2 years ago, you had the Soros-funded prosecutor Chesa Boudin, who actually was recalled in a recall election. Now, unfortunately, the successor wasn't too much better, but at least slightly better. But in Portland, Oregon, which is essentially the American home of Antifa, that's a far left city if there ever were one, the Soros-funded progressive prosecutor actually just lost his primary in Portland, Oregon, just a couple of weeks ago. So there are some signs of a pushback. Me personally, I take solace in the fact that I live in a red state where I don't deal with any of this nonsense. And I hope that more sane Americans choose to make that leap from these blue states that are ridden by crime, ridden by illegal aliens, and make the move to red states, which are home to civilizational sanity.
Now, Hunter Biden's federal gun trial is underway. The jury will hear about how the president's son got his brother's widow, who he was having sex with at the time, hooked on crack cocaine. Haley Biden is one of the people who's going to be giving evidence in this case. She's the one who was so worried about Hunter having a gun that she took it and dumped it in a bin near a school. Tell me about her being a witness in this case, Josh, and the fact that she had a recent visit from President Biden. I mean, is that a proper thing to be doing, to be visiting someone who's going to be a witness at your son's trial?
No, it is most certainly not a proper thing to do here. I mean, the optics of this stink to high heaven, frankly. I mean, it has all of the look of the president of the United States trying to intimidate a key witness right before his son is facing potentially up to 25 years in prison. So, look, Democrats know, Rita, that the media will cover for them no matter what. So they feel totally emboldened to do stunts like this out in the open, knowing that no one other than, than conservatives like me will come on a rant about it. But the New York Times, Washington Post, they will never raise an eyebrow. To them, this obviously looks fully proper, but it is anything but that. Look, the Hunter Biden gun trial, a lot of my fellow conservatives are not really paying a lot of attention to it because the special counsel, David Weiss, has not charged Hunter Biden with foreign stuff, with FARA, with Ukraine, China, any of the juicier stuff. But the reason that I am paying attention to this gun trial, Rita, is because Hunter Biden is dead to rights on these actual charges, on these gun charges there, which essentially allege that he was a drug addict at the time that he purchased a firearm, that he was trafficking that firearm while being a drug addict. The reason that we know that he is dead to rights and that he has committed this crime is because he literally admitted it. He literally admitted it in his memoir, Beautiful Things, in 2021. I don't know who his lawyer was, who his literary agent was, who thought that was a good idea, but we know based on the audio on his laptop and in the memoir itself that he did this. So the reason that I'm following this trial closely, Rita, is because this is actually going to be a perfect test of the impartiality or fairness of America's justice system. After what happened to Donald Trump just now in particular, if there is anything left to take any pride in whatsoever in the American criminal justice system, Hunter Biden has to go to jail. Not home confinement, not probation, nothing like that. He is dead to rights on these charges, up to 25 years. I want to see a prison sentence.
Now, before you go, I've got to ask you about Senator John Fetterman from the great state of Pennsylvania. He's a changed man. He went into a facility, has come out completely different, more coherent, just with a better sense and grasp of everything. And he recently received a standing ovation at Yeshiva University after telling students in a commencement address that he was profoundly disappointed with his alma mater, Harvard, and he was so ashamed that he took off his crimson Harvard hood. Let's have a look.
And for me personally, I do not fundamentally believe that it's right for me to wear this today.
And the students sure did appreciate his comments. They celebrated. So just briefly, Josh, what happened to Fetterman? How is he so dramatically different to the man from 2 years ago?
Yeah, John Fetterman might be the first person that I've ever seen who suffered literal physical brain damage and became a much more sane and rational human being as a result of that. I've never seen it before, to be honest with you. But if you go back to the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race back in 2022, John Fetterman did not run as a moderate. He ran as essentially a squad AOC Ilhan Omar candidate in the U.S. Senate. If he had continued on that trajectory and had not suffered that stroke, he would be among the most radical left-wing senators in the entire U.S. Senate, along with people like Tammy Baldwin and Bernie Sanders, probably people like that. But he's a changed man now. And, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to know what the correlation is between having a physical stroke and somehow emerging much more sane and rational as a result of it. What I can tell you, and that video that we just saw kind of underscores his point, he's become something of a folk hero, frankly, in the American Jewish community. I have a lot of Jewish conservative friends, Jewish Republicans, who are even just laudably praising John Fetterman. A couple of them are even saying that they're going to write in a vote for him this fall. I obviously am not going to do that myself. But the fact that John Fetterman has emerged like this, especially on the Israel issue, on fighting anti-Semitism, it is a small sign of hope, Rita, amidst a Democratic Party that increasingly overall really does seem to be lurching to the very, very, very far left on this issue and other issues. But people like Fetterman, I guess, do give at least a small modicum of hope.
Well, yeah, he's an outlier, and I don't know if the stroke had anything to do with it, but yeah, he disappeared for a period, came back, and now we have a man who's far more lucid, far more centrist. He was radically left when he was first elected into the Senate. Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you.